Hello there and welcome to another video as part of the series on how to build your own AI-powered future-proofed CRM system that probably runs for about 2 or 3% of the cost of your existing SaaS subscriptions if you're any business that has between 5 and 100 employees. What I'm going to do in this video is take you through an automation on how you can track all of the emails, both inbound and outbound from your company. So that's all of your project manager emails, anyone in your organization, and upsert those to an AI knowledge base so that you can use that communication data to build a client profile and build accurate AI agents, then understand your project, understand your client, and are able to be actually useful to automate boring, repetitive tasks in your business. Now, before I start, I created an intro video to this series that talks about how we're going to analyze every portion of any service-based business in this world's service lifecycle or product lifecycle. So everything from acquiring clients all the way to service delivery. I've broken that down into sections, analyzed how AI is going to help boost and increase efficiency and also cut time wasted on manual tasks, which is going to save you money. And this is analyzing one of the first steps where we're going to actually upsert and create a knowledge base, which is then going to allow us to build accurate AI agents that can actually help in your business and not just going to wreck everything. Now, before I crack into it, if you're not familiar with who I am, my name's Adam. I come from a freelancing background. I spent 5 years on Upwork and delivered over 50 projects there and earned expert vetted status. Using all that experience, I then transitioned to building my own global low-code software development agency, which has done over 250 projects for clients worldwide. So I've done a lot of hands-on work with AI and building applications. And what I wanted to do was translate all of that into building our own super-powered CRM system that runs for peanuts and actually helps remove all of the painful things in a service delivery business, project management, manual tasks, and actually showcase how we're going to build that live on camera. Now, I'm about to jump into it, but if you want access to all of the templates, the N8N templates, and all the behind the scenes materials that are used in this processes, feel free to go across to my completely free community where I'm going to make that all easily accessible. You can download it and access it all for free. So let's get into it. Step one here is aggregating all of the communication data between you and a client so that you can use that as a knowledge base for AI agents in later stages of this process to automate your CRM, which can actually source accurate data and understand the context of your business, which means they're going to make actual good decisions when playing around with your data. So failure to do this is going to mean that your AI agents don't really understand your business. They don't understand your client. And the way I explain it is it's like an intern starting on day one. So they might have the right intentions, but they've got no experience. They don't understand your business's processes. They don't understand your business's brand. And there's a limit to how much good they can do for your company. So what we're trying to do here is turn an intern into an employee with 20 or 30 years experience so that they can actually make educated decisions on your business's actions. Now, step one here is emails. So what I'm going to do is show you how you can upsert or add all of the inbound and outbound emails from your business to clients and put those all into an AI knowledge base. Now, this is across your entire company. So as long as they're on the same domain or in the same organization as you, this will work. Now, there's two sections to doing this. So first workflow I've got here is how we can actually scrape all those emails or access all of those emails. And then the second workflow we have here is actually extracting the body of those emails and upserting those emails to a vector store and also creating that email or saving it in a database. So I'm going to walk through this step by step. Now, I wanted to film this entire build live, but being completely transparent, it took me probably about 8 hours to get this whole thing sorted. And there was a lot of fidgeting and playing around. So what I've done is I've just saved you guys the hassle of watching me for 8 hours, go back and forth trying to figure this out. And I'm just going to explain it step by step. And I'll also make the template available in my community. So first off, this is going to run every day. So it's not going to be instant. It's going to run every day. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull all of the emails from every email in my Google Suite or G Suite account across my organization. It's going to get all of the email IDs, and then it's going to pass it to a sub workflow, which is going to be the workflow that actually pulls each individual email, extracts all of the data, and then adds that to an AI agent knowledge base and also saves it into a database. Now, before you do any of this, I'm assuming you use G Suite with your business. And what you need to do is you need to come across to GCP or Google Cloud Console, and you need to come down into, the first thing you need to do is you need to come across to APIs and services. So if you come to Google Cloud, and you go APIs and services here, search for Gmail, come to the Gmail API and make sure you've hit enable here. So hit enable on Gmail. Now the next step you have to do is come across to your credentials and create credentials and create a service account. Now, go through the steps to create that service account. If you need help here, just prompt ChatGPT and it'll explain exactly what things to check and uncheck if you're unsure. And what you should end up with is a service account that looks like this. Now, if you come into your service account, one thing you need to do is you need to add domain-wide rules to your organization. So for this step, you need to go to Google's admin console, come down to access and data control and go to API controls. Then come to domain-wide delegation. And in here, you're going to want to add a new API client and add the following permissions. So I really think you mainly only need this one and possibly this one, but add all of these in just to be safe. You can probably remove mail.google.com, to be honest. Add those ones in and then come back to your N8N Gmail and come to keys. Now, what you want to do here is you want to generate a key. And what this is actually going to do is it's going to download a JSON file to your computer. Once you have that, you want to come back to N8N and you want to drag this JWT from the sidebar here. You want to come to JWT, which stands for JSON Web Token, and you want to add that onto your board. Now, what we're doing here is we're basically generating a key, which we can then exchange for an access token, which allows us to query your organization and get all of the users or emails in your organization. Now, I'm going to add this as a template, so you don't need to know this word for word. You can go and grab it completely for free in my community. But what you want to do here is pass this body. Note that sub is an admin account. So this is the account that you're going to impersonate through this service account. And what you also want to do is add your Google service account credential. So come to credentials, select PEM key. Now the private key is in the JSON file that you downloaded. So you'll see that there's a private key. It starts with there's a text at the start and end that I think says begin private key and end private key. It's a long string. Copy that string and throw it in the private key here and make sure the algorithm is RS256. And save that. What you're going to do with that is you're then going to exchange that for an access token. So we're going to post to this URL. We're going to send the body of the previous response. And what we do there is we get an access token, which we can then pass to a HTTP request to retrieve all of the users in your organization. And what this comes back with is a list of users within your organization. Now, the next step we want to do is each of those users, we're then going to do the same thing and generate an access token for each of those users. We're going to get all of the emails for each of those users in the past day. So you'll see here, we're getting all of the emails in the past day. And then what we're doing is we're passing each of those emails to a sub workflow, which is actually, this only returns the email's ID. It doesn't return the body. We're going to pass it to a sub workflow, which looks like this. It's actually going to extract the body and all of the information from the email, which we can then upsert to our AI knowledge base, which in this case, we're using Pinecone. And we're also going to create a record in our database. Now, what I'll do is I'll run this for you now so you can see how this works. But I'm going to pause it because I don't want it to loop over every email for now, but I'll test the workflow. Cool. So it's gone through there and it's done all of those things. Now, the next thing it's doing is it's executing the workflow. Now, if you want to set this up and test it for yourself, what I'd recommend is grab an access token for a user. You can see here though, we're getting all of the IDs for each message. But what I want is the access token. So I can grab this access token, which happens to be for my email. And what I can do is pass it. So here we have three variables. You can see we've got the access token, the message IDs, and the email for the user. Now, if you want to test this, and this is just the default, like when I run a test, it's using this data and you can actually just modify it yourself purely for testing purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the access token that I just copied in here and save. And so when I run this workflow now, it'll use that access token to generate and get all the emails. So what I'll do is I'll test the workflow. And you'll see it's going to loop through each of the emails that have been sent out of the provided email account in the last day. The reason I have this wait on here is because there's a rate limit on how many times you can query Google's API. And before, without this wait limit, I was getting some errors polling the API too hard. So we've just got a little bit of a wait module in here to allow for this to slow down and just do it at a rate where we're not going to have any issues from rate limits. All right, so it's gone through, it's gotten all the emails, and now what it's doing is it's passing this information to Pinecone. And what you'll see here is we have a JSON score is greater than or equal to 0.46. Now, what is happening in this stage is we have all of our clients and all of our company data in this vector database, which is where we can store all the client emails and all that kind of information. So what we're doing here is we're passing the participants in the email. So what this is extracting all the emails. And once it's run, you'll see that in there. We're passing all of the participants that were in the meeting, and we're checking in our vector database to see if any of those emails correspond to a client that's in our knowledge base or database. And if so, then we're going to flag that as a client email, and we're going to create an email in our database, and we're going to upsert that email into our vector database or knowledge base. Everything else, which could be like marketing emails, all those kind of things, we don't want those in the database. We only want client communications. So that's what this if statement is doing here. Now you'll see what happens is we had 35 items that were flagged as having a client as one of the participants or the members on the email, and 31 that were flagged as not. So what happened was we created an email in our database. Now we've built this application on a tool called bubble.io, which is like a low code software development builder. But what I'll show you is that we have this workspaces section in our CRM. So each of these workspaces is for a project that we're doing for a client. And so what's happened is there's a client object in our backend, and we've created an email that's going to then get uploaded to our vector database. So we can use that in API requests where we're going to try and generate client sentiment and all sorts of other automations that we try and add into this workflow. All right, now you've seen the process of how this is working, and this might be slightly different for your CRM, but what I'd recommend creating in terms of fields to get this to work, 3 different database fields. So I would create one for meetings, one for emails, and one for messages. Now, if you haven't built your own CRM system and you're using a plug and play CRM system, this is going to be one issue where you're going to see a couple problems. And what I'd recommend using is Airtable or something to store this communications data, because this is what's going to give you the power. You need to access your own data or have access to this communications data so that you can use it to fuel your AI agents so they can understand your projects and your client communications and then make decisions based on what's actually happening in your project. So for each of the 3 database fields that you want to store meetings, you want to store emails, and you want to store messages and any other communication types you have. So if you're making cold calls or something like that, you'll definitely want to include those in there as well. And the basic structures, table structures for that, you can prompt ChatGPT and it'll give you those structures. But rough things you want to be storing for a meeting, for example, is the participants, the date of the meeting, the transcript, and any other relevant information. So here we've got a meeting link. We use Firefly's AI to scrape their meetings. So you might want to store that as well, just in case you want to reference that at a later point. You also want to reference it to any relevant data type. So for us, every meeting is hopefully associated with a client as either a lead, if it's not yet at the project stage. Once it's at a project stage, it's associated with a project. So we have meetings associated with leads, which is really a client, or meetings associated with projects. Same thing goes for emails, same thing goes for messages. Now, how does this look in Pinecone and how does that even work? So here's an example of a meeting transcript that got upserted to Pinecone. So what you can see on here is we have a number of different metadata, and it's really important you get this set up correctly. Now, if you come to here and you come down to the default data loader in N8N, what's really important is to set up your metadata correctly, because metadata is what allows filtering in a vector database. So to quickly explain what happens here, when you upsert a record into a vector database, what you're doing is you're upserting an embedding, which is really a vector that is thousands of numbers long. Now, what's happening behind the scenes at a really high level is they're taking text and they're converting it into this super long list of numbers, which is essentially a numerical way to display a text. And then what they can do is they can do really quick computations to draw similarity searches. And I've made a video on vector databases and how that works. So if you want to watch that, check out the video above. But at a really high level, what's happening is we're plotting this really, really long list of numbers into this giant database. And what's happening is when you run a search, you're really just looking looking for the nearest giant number in this massive Cartesian space. Now that might sound really, really confusing, but essentially it's a much quicker way of doing searches compared to the traditional approach, which was lots of Excel data tables essentially linked together. So when you wanted to find one record in that database, you'd have to filter across, let's say there's 200,000 records in your client's database, for example, if you're a massive enterprise. What happens is when you look for one, you have to kind of filter through 200,000 rows to find the row that you're looking for. With the vector database, it's a different way of searching, and we're actually just drawing a line from the nearest points to pull data. So it's a lot quicker and a lot easier to store and search for data. So what's happening here is we've got an embedding behind the scene, which is this giant number in a Cartesian space, but we also have this metadata. And what this is really useful for example, the client ID, is if I'm on a page and I want to embed a chatbot on our page that allows us to search information just about a client. So let's say I'm in this project page and this project is linked to one client and I want to ask it about what timesheets have been logged against a client, or what are the most recent communications that we've had with this client, or what are the current pending tasks with this client. What I'll do is I'll make a request to Pinecone to pull that information, but I'll include a filter for the client ID so that Pinecone knows not to confuse the search with other clients that we're working with. So it's a way to kind of chunk up these giant vector databases into categories so that you can filter by a specific client, you can filter by a specific project, you can filter by a specific category. So that could be communications, it could be timesheets, it could be proposals, whatever the case is. So you will want to make sure that you chunk this up in a way that works for your business. What we've done mainly across a lot of these is we've stored the client ID because that's our main parent record, I guess, or the record at the core of this entire lifestyle process. So it becomes a lead, then it becomes an estimate, then it becomes a project. But at the core of it, it's the same client ID that's underneath all of those different stages. So we store all of the transcripts and all that kind of stuff against there. But then once it becomes a project or once it becomes an estimate, we'll then store those IDs on the record as well in case we want to filter by a client when they just started a project, etc., etc. You will just want to plan out exactly how you set up that metadata to get this to work correctly for you. Now, that pretty much sums up this video. If you're interested in following me along this journey of building a really comprehensive AI-powered CRM system that, in my opinion, will probably be the most efficient and also the cheapest to run in the world, so you can actually build these systems yourself with a basic knowledge of tech and N8N and also low-code frameworks and building databases, etc. This, in my opinion, is the future of software to move away from these giant SaaS tools and actually be able to build your own tools that you can set up your own AI automations for, and also you can own all your own data and keep it in one central location, which really gives you power to build autonomous AI agents and make the most of your own company data. Now, if you're interested in following me along this journey and learning about how you can automate all different parts of your business, definitely subscribe to this channel. Feel free to check out other videos in this series, and also feel free to join our completely free community in the link in the description, where I do weekly Q&As and we have discussions about AI and low code and how we can use those to better deliver projects for clients or to build your own projects and take advantage of this new wave of tech. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.